We're so lucky to have our period. It is this report card, it is this vital sign. And I think when you're able to start building a relationship with it, then you can let go of the pain or the symptomology and it be feedback.
Welcome back to Her Daily Rhythm. I'm your host, Natalie Smythe, and today's conversation is genuinely one that I've been looking forward to sharing with you. My guest is Dr. Kiah McGowan, a registered Chinese medicine practitioner based in Melbourne, whose work sits right at the intersection of traditional wisdom and modern women's health. The core approach to Kiah's work is that your symptoms are not random. They are intelligent signals. Your body is always communicating with you. We just haven't been given the right tools to listen. In this episode, we get into what your period is actually telling you, how to read your cycle like a monthly report card, and the 4 phases of your cycle mapped into seasons. We also look at PMS through the lens of TCM, which is really interesting. And of course, cold is the enemy for hormonal health. For such a jovial conversation, it really makes you own and participate and pay attention to your body in a completely different way. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
So welcome, Kiah.
Thank you. I think that a massive part of me getting into doing what I do was feeling a little bit uneducated in my health journey and going to see doctors and just never really actually understanding how my body was working or why it was showing up with symptoms that just didn't make sense to me.
I think anybody that has come into the CAM therapy space, which I think that name also needs to be updated using the word, because I think language is so important. It's not alternative. It's a union and it's a relationship and it's integrative. So how has your journey started here, and particularly with women's health?
I initially got into Chinese medicine when I was a teenager. I was a very stressed, anxious teenager, and it led to me really struggling with my sleep. I kept on going to see different GPs about these issues and just never really felt like they were helping. They were just saying, oh, you're too young to stress, do we? And so after so many of those sessions and just feeling quite disregarded and upset, I found a Chinese medicine practitioner and they completely changed my life. I felt listened to and I felt educated about my body, and they asked so many questions about things that weren't just the stress. It was, yes, about my sleep, but also what was I eating? What was my routine like? And that just helped me to find what I wanted to do. As soon as I got into Chinese medicine school in Sydney, I noticed how much knowledge I wanted to learn about women's health, and it just became a massive passion of mine.
TCM in particular, or acupuncture, it's been popularized by fertility. That's kind of one thing that there is this big success use case in the Western medical landscape. TCM is at least acknowledged in that piece for fertility. From my understanding of it, it's based on building more qi and more circulation and more warming to the uterus and the tissues. I wonder how you could speak about or reframe that.
The period is your monthly report card. So it just tells you so much about the way that your body is regulating, balancing, how much nourishment it has throughout the month. And it's just a visible thing that we can see and experience at the end of it. But in TCM, a cycle is based on balance of qi and blood, nourishment of qi and blood, the balance between yin and yang. We've got the liver, spleen, and kidney, quite importantly, as our organs. And then, as always, with Chinese medicine, we want to keep things warm. So making sure that things are flowing well is really important.
The way our culture has set up our relationship with our bodies, it's not to be inquisitive. So I think the most important thing from this conversation is really getting inquisitive, and this is what you speak about so well, is the report card, the blood, the colors and things like that. These new terms of qi and warmth. What's a way that this can become a normal language for somebody?
The best way to think of it is the body is a warm place. It's a warm environment. So naturally, if we were to introduce cold to that environment, the body is going to have to neutralize that and warm it up anyway, which means that additional energy is going towards that. Now, cold in Chinese medicine constricts flow. It slows things down, just like, water would turn to ice. Things are going to slow and solidify in terms of cold. So especially when we're thinking about fertility or the cycle, which relies on flow itself, we want to be really promoting warmth so that things can run smoothly, flow freely, and that everything that needs to be nourished can be done. Cold is the enemy of Chinese medicine.
Walk me through how you actually read a cycle. What are the specific things that you're looking out for?
In Chinese medicine, we ask a trillion questions anytime someone comes to see us. But when I'm looking at a cycle, I compare whatever someone is coming in with to what a perfect cycle looks like in Chinese medicine. So that would be 26 to 32 days in total, 3 to 7 days of bleeding. We want minimal symptoms or no symptoms. Definitely no pain that sets you back or requires medication. Minimal emotional changes, minimal bloating or energy changes. Ovulation should be happening regularly at that mid-cycle kind of point. And the period itself should just come and go as a breeze, but the cycle should also be that way. You should be able to identify when you're ovulating. You should be able to feel these shifts in the way that you're feeling quite naturally. So when we get a lot of feedback from the body that isn't the way it's working, that's when I think about imbalances.
We've normalized a lot of things that actually aren't normal. And then when we say these things that you're not supposed to experience pain, then I think in the landscape of social media, women might experience shame. So there seems to be this knock-on effect, I think, that is happening in the more information that we are receiving. How can each person take that information on themselves and break down the signs and symptoms? So where you would start with is what the blood color looks like.
So ideally we'd want to see it as a fresh red, but if we were to see a darker color like a wine color, then we're thinking about stagnation because things aren't moving as quickly. It's already oxidizing, if that makes sense. Then if we have a very pale flow, we start to think about deficiency. Why don't we have enough blood to release? Why don't we have enough iron and hemoglobin and everything in the body to provide enough of a fresh red color? I think that it provides us so much information in terms of color. And when we think about clots as well, a lot of people just think that clots are completely normal too. And having humongous clots the size of 50-cent coins here in Australia is actually something we need to look into. That's a really important piece of data from the body that it's giving you.
And if you are seeing clots, for example, from my lens, we're looking at prostaglandin excess, high inflammation and things like that, or insufficient progesterone, what is that language or things that you would be looking at?
In Chinese medicine are a sign that something isn't moving, specifically of blood. If we think about what a clot is, it's a physical manifestation of blood stagnation in Chinese medicine. It's blood that hasn't moved and has therefore congealed together. So anytime I see clots, I'm thinking of stagnation. Often we see it with people who have endometriosis or fibroids, which are a sign often of a wider spread like stagnation. This can come about a lot from stress and held on to emotions and even cold as well, which is going to slow down that flow. So absolutely, it could just be how you've been going that month. Maybe it was summer and you had a lot of ice cream and salads and stuff like that.
Really?
But it could also be, could also be a sign of a more deeper stagnation and constitutional change that we're looking at.
That's that's amazing. So I guess for some people with their cycles who are either maybe shameful about their periods and embarrassed by it and have pain about it and they just hate it, because I just see so many people in pain. How would you explain to them how to start building that relationship with just looking at the blood and kind of reestablishing a relationship that we're so lucky to have our period. It is this report card, it is this vital sign. And I think when you're able to start building a relationship with it, then you can let go of the pain or the symptomology and it be feedback.
One of my favorite concepts that I work with all the time with my patients is body literacy. So it's understanding that your body is talking to you through symptoms every single day. And if you can be present and you have the time and the presence to listen to it, then you can actually usually decode what's going on. In terms of the periods, just getting women and people with uteruses to understand that having this body is so incredible, and we get to be so connected with our bodies if we give it a chance. I think that in this day and age of being on phones so much and being so not present, being able to sit with your body and listen to it is actually radical in a way.
Absolutely. And in that it's a natural detoxification physically, but also detoxing out emotions and processing the emotional static load of the month. And you can see that physically.
Absolutely.
You touched on a really nice point. We're in constant connection with our phones and social media, so we override those messages from our body because we can ask ChatGPT, right? Even though it can be helpful for some people in situations to unpack things that you don't understand about yourself, you're still overriding your internal messages and cues. As you say, this is quite radical. If I share someone to just kind of get in touch with your body and the messages and signals, they say, yeah, but don't actually know how to do it. So I think we need to really spell it out for people. Like, what does it mean to listen to your body and what signals will you receive?
I often recommend that people start tracking their symptoms in apps. A really good fertility tracking apps online where you can track mood changes and bloating or even nosebleeds or whatever comes through in your cycle. And when my patients start doing that, they are actively having to be a bit present throughout their day and track their symptoms. I'm like, how much this flows in and out every single month that you do it? This is a sign that there is a pattern there. It's the first step. And then they'll come into a session and begin to be able to answer questions more easily because they're like, yeah, my body told me this the other day. And I think it's one of my favorite moments when someone starts to answer questions more easily because they've been more present.
The people that are coming to see you at the moment, I've always feel like there's patterns or there's certain cycles of what's arising in the current cultural moment.
I mean, here in Melbourne, it's awesome. But in Chinese medicine, it's all about letting go of the old, shedding old leaves, really preparing yourself for this deep winter of restoration. So a lot of people are coming in to see me with past relationship grief, a lot of inability to let go of certain jobs and certain ways of living or past understandings of who they are with the overall landscape of everything happening in the world at the moment. Nervous system dysregulation, stress, anxiety is just running rampant, and that is probably the most common set of symptoms that I'm seeing at the moment.
Where never have we been in a time where we've been so hypervigilant and have access to global scale of disasters through our phone, and we have access to that at any one time. Evolutionarily, for humans and our nervous system, the traditional treatment to what you're treating now with our nervous systems, is it the same?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to when I was a teenager and I was stressing so much about my final exams in high school, that was a persistent high-level stress that led to a dysregulation for me. And in Chinese medicine, that was the stagnation internally that really wound up into heat and caused panic attacks. And the body doesn't discern between the stressor. In Chinese medicine, there is just stress, and it affects systems in different ways depending on your constitution. So I think with all of this overstimulation and stress and anxiety that's worldwide, and all of my patients as well, I think it is this overall overstimulation of our heart, Shen, in Chinese medicine, which is like our overall spirit, it's our cognition, it's our emotional center. So all the time when I'm working on this stress or anxiety or depression, I'm working on balancing out the Shen, which is the core of it, I think.
That's really beautiful. We don't speak so much about our hearts in Western medicine, and the energetics of our heart too, and how, you know, it's dwindled down to like your heart is a pump and it's your cardiovascular system, and it only affects you when you're like in your 50s, but how the heart actually connects and touches every single organ in the body. In that heart medicine. And you mentioned about panic attacks being like excess heat. I feel like for a lot of people these terms are so different, and so in our language, so we say that they're confusing, but I think they actually simplify a lot of things. And instead of it being this diagnostic of like a panic attack needing, you know, 5-HTP or whatever it is, and balancing this neuropathway, it's an extra heat rising in me. So how can I balance that heat?
That often when I use Chinese medicine terms to a lot of people, they're initially met with a lot of resistance. But if we think about the fact that this medicine is so ancient, of course, they just have simple terminology. You know, they noticed that certain colds or flus came around in winter and they called that wind cold. Or they called it wind heat in summer. Or if someone had a lot of inflammation, overstimulation, that's easily heat. It's just a simple way of putting a lot of various conditions under one umbrella. And that's what we do in Chinese medicine. It's a collection of symptoms, so it's a pattern.
You mentioned about seasonality. I think seasonality is so beautiful on that physical, mental, and emotional layer.
Seasonal change in Chinese medicine is so huge, and living in accordance with the seasons is one of my biggest passions. So it's really fun being able to see that in a tangible way around me as well. And especially if we think about the menstrual cycle, we think about all the change within seasons throughout the year and how much they flow into each other and the symbology of them. It makes sense to relate it back to a menstrual cycle. So if we think about menstruation, your periods, this is a real inner winter. And the qi in blood is moving downwards. We need to support our liver and kidneys in Chinese medicine. And we need to stay warm. We need to really support our bodies in calming down, settling down, not doing too much. It's all about resting and self-reflection and restoration. Your period is your cozy winter time. You don't need to push it. And then when we think about the follicular cycle, we've lost his blood in the cycle, and now we move into this really exciting time where we get some energy back, and our blood and our yin is rebuilding, our follicle and our lining is growing, and we can really take advantage of that. So you can start to add on more exercise. You can start to add on more to your social calendar. It's kind of your rebuilding phase. So you're nourishing the blood that you lost, but then you're also being able to utilize that new energy more. I love the follicular phase. It's so fun. And then if we think about moving into ovulation, that is the peak of our yang energy in that summer. This is everyone's favorite part because you get this influx of energy, expansion, movement. You can get your biggest gains at the gym. You can eat some more food, but you probably don't need it as much. It's purely just the best time to be trying new things, getting yourself out there, going on first dates, or making public presentations and things like that, and taking advantage of that summer energy. And then the last thing that we move into is we get this big influx of yang. It drops off a little bit again for autumn, and that is our luteal phase. So a lot of people struggle during this time if they are always burning themselves out and they struggle to wind themselves down. It, again, as it is now, is all about shedding and preparing to really shed those old layers and hunker down for winter. So a lot of letting go, a lot of promoting flow and emotional release. It's a lot of grounding, warming, stabilizing. So yeah, I think that autumn is a tricky one for most people, especially if you get a lot of PMS, because that will come up at that time if your flow isn't flowing in the way that it's meant to. But the beautiful time is things are more balanced.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful way to live and have that connection to the seasons. But I suppose most people would say, okay, well, great in theory, and I've tried it, but I work in this office with all of these fluorescent lights, and if I have period pain, my boss and the deadlines, hello, hello, hello. How do you kind of get people to adapt it to themselves? I think everything's about adaptation and what works for you individually.
It is never going to be textbook following exactly for every person. And each month, depending on my energy and my reserves, I will shift that. But I'm always going to be staying warm in the winter, in the menstrual cycle. And financial requirements and things like that are going to get in the way. But it's just about doing what you can when you can. It's about nourishing your body with the right foods at different points so that you'll feel a bit better. It's understanding that you don't need to push yourself so much when you're bleeding or in your luteal phase, when your energy is lower. I think just, again, that presence of being able to recognize that you may be a little bit lower in energy or higher in energy, for example, and then responding in that way.
I want to go into PMS because I think you talk about PMS. I really love the way that you break it down into these different patterns because, I can look at the different patterns in blood sugar dysregulation and cortisol burden and things like this.
So again, in Chinese medicine, one person that comes in, say, PMS, could be diagnosed with very different patterns compared to another person that comes in with PMS. It all depends on the body constitution and the interplay of different organ systems. So, for example, if someone were to come in with irritability, tender breast, mood swings, a lot of what we see with estrogen dominance, they're probably coming in with liver qi stagnation. So we know that we need to get that flow moving. It's often a nervous system issue before it's a hormone issue. So really trying to reduce stress for that person. And then if we're thinking about the person that's really teary and depleted, fatigued, I'm thinking about spleen deficiency or a deficiency of another organ. And it's really important that they're nourishing with food and rest and checking in on their blood tests, maybe to see if they're deficient in anything. This will often overlap with fluid retention and gut dysbiosis as well if we're thinking more functionally. But yeah, a completely different diagnosis there. And then you have those people who are extremely anxious or get insomnia before their period comes. I think that's a really common one lately. And that is more of a yin imbalance or again, that heart center is feeling out of balance. So we get this upsurge of emotions. And if we think about that in more Western medicine, that might be a cortisol dysregulation or something with that. But yeah, each condition can be so different when we're thinking about PMS. It just depends on what system is presenting those symptoms outward with.
And so if someone has listened to this, they're like, okay, that's me. I have a yin deficiency. What's the next step?
So obviously being a Chinese medicine practitioner is great to make more sense of it. But something I'm passionate about on my page is trying to help everyday people make sense of the confusing TCM jargon. So if I think about someone who is quite yin deficient, I am looking at that person that is overworking and probably a little bit burnt out, maybe staying up late, maybe not nourishing their bodies in the way that they're meant to and not resting enough. So therefore, we would be working on promoting a lot more rest and slowness and nourishment in our treatment. If we were to think of someone who has a lot of qi stagnation and that emotional dysregulation, high cortisol, they're snappy, that's going to require a lot more flow, maybe some movement. but it's just being able to match up these Chinese terms with more Western understanding so that people can relate a bit.
With, the OCP, the oral contraceptive pill, there's been like a radical boycotting of it, which is, great. But for somebody that has been on the pill for about at least 10 years and they're coming off it and they might not be getting their periods back so swiftly, what would you be looking at?
If we think about the pill and the fact that the ovaries are kind of on holiday, sometimes if there is a lot of constitutional imbalance, say that person has a lot of stress and a lot of, say, stagnation in their body that is stopping the period from coming, that is going to be ever more present when you take away a synthetic hormone. So thinking about diagnosing what their body is doing constitutionally and then working on top of that is really important. I'm also making sure that they're eating enough and their hormones are regulated, and we're doing a good blood test. We're checking in on if their liver is getting rid of enough hormones and excreting toxins. I think coming off the pill is such a dramatic change for the body, and it can kind of just reveal what the Band-Aid was sitting on top of the whole time. And unfortunately, that's a really tough process for some people. It depends patient to patient.
I think this education piece on women's cycles that we don't receive in school really, and also understanding if you do have pain, there is more options than taking a Nurofen or a Panadol. We think it's normal to take, for 5 days of a month, take painkillers, but that creates a complete knock-on effect to your hormones, your nervous system, and your liver, and all of the things that we're trying to balance. So I think something that can seem quite innocent actually can affect the whole system. And then, from naturopathic terms, we're looking at gut dysbiosis, how that affects that. So what are your thoughts on taking conventional pain remedies?
I think that if it's helping someone to get through their day and get to work and live their life as they need to, unfortunately, in the society that we're in, then it's absolutely warranted. But why not at the same time look deeper and see why the pain is there in the first place? Like, I would love to say everyone should stop taking pain medication, but if someone has endo, then it's going to be impossible for them to get through their day. What I say to my patients is, your symptoms are the messenger, don't shoot the messenger. And that is taking pain medication. If this is the way that your body's communicating with you, then telling it, shush, I can't deal with this right now. Eventually, you're going to have to start listening to it and figure out what's actually behind it. So it's not that I think people should completely stop, or maybe they should opt for Panadol instead of Nurofen and not tear apart their gut. But I do think that they should take a moment and actually figure out what's happening and what they can correct or work on to help reduce this pain in the background.
And have you seen positive cases where somebody that was relying on pain medication each month have come off it through acupuncture, through TCM?
I have. It's one of my favorite results to have, because people will come in and they'll be like, my period gave me no warning this, and I ruined my favorite pair of underwear. Unfortunate for the underwear, but that is the way it should be. We shouldn't have all these warning signals that your life is going to end for a week. I remember having a friend come in who her entire life has had painful cycles where she's had to take 5 days off work, and it completely gotten in the way of her life. And she was seeing me for a month, and then her first period post-treatment came, and she was like, oh, nothing happened. It was fine. I'm like, yeah.
1 month?
That was rare, but it was great.
Yeah, wow. So in that case, that it was something so simple, obviously not simple, but a month worth of treatment, what was the underlying concern there?
Yeah, so she had a lot of emotional stagnation, and we started working on calming her nervous system, reducing her overworking tendencies, setting up really good sleep hygiene practices, and with the acupuncture, we're calming the Shen, and we're also promoting flow and reducing that stagnation, and that just really, really helped her. So it was quite simple in that case, but it often isn't.
I think that nervous system piece is so crucial, isn't it? Because a lot of us don't realize that we're in a hypervigilant state, and we have work stresses, we have relationship stresses, we have social stresses, everything, but we just keep raising the bar and then getting a little bit more tense. So, not breathing.
Yeah.
What are some of your nervous system remedies if people can't come in for acupuncture?
That if you are in a fight or flight state for most of your day, I think setting apart 5-10 minutes to start of time to let your body know that it's safe is really important. And every person is different. Everyone has different sensory requirements. A lot of people won't be able to just sit still and meditate and feel calm. But finding something that works for you, whether it is meditation or journaling or tapping, is a really great one. I love that. Somatic exercises are really great as well if you struggle to stand still for a bit.
What type of somatic exercises? Because I think this is a big term that we're seeing at
Very
the moment.
broad, yeah.
And people, I think it's creating a bit of overwhelm. So
Yeah.
what would be a simple somatic exercise?
I think if people hold on to a lot of emotions and they're finding themselves fidgeting, just allowing themselves to fidget or shake it out, or even the idea of like wiping things down, getting the emotions off you, can be a helpful one for some people to reset. Somatic exercises are essentially just getting your body to feel it out. And so finding the one that works for you amongst the hundreds out there is good.
We're doing with neurodivergency, hyperactivity, ADHD, all of these things. A lot of the time it's just shift the energy, move the energy, and then you can find that new focus. But I really loved what you said, that just finding a moment to find safety at the beginning of your day. I think that's such a great reframe, instead of sit and meditate and find stillness and clear the thoughts. That's so disassociated. Just find safety.
I've never had a clear thought, so how is everyone going to relate to that?
Yeah, I really love that. Find safety for your day. I think that's such a beautiful remedy, and makes it, supportive to our bodies, right? Because I think a lot of us maybe don't even know what safety feels like, to like fully breathe into your belly.
Yeah, so many chest breathers out there.
We have this obsession with food, don't we? We've all been turned into foodies and things, and all flavors, but it's like that's dictating us rather than listening to our body and tasting the qualities of food. Because as you say, like the sweetness that you get from those complex carbohydrates is so sweet and nourishing. Or even if you let bread dissolve on your tongue, like the sweetness in that.
I think that people are forgetting that food is the first medicine, and in Chinese medicine, dietary medicine is actually the first preventative care. So that is where we put a lot of focus. And then it's acupuncture, and then it's herbs. So it's really important that people are using this free-ish part of medicine to help nourish their body first. And if you do get certain cravings, then it might be a sign that something's imbalanced and you should get more of those foods. I think that food is a really good place to start for a lot of people.
You've got somebody in their 30s, like stressed, social life, they're maybe wanting to think about building a family, get pregnant, but erratic PMS symptoms. How could they start with their diet, with their food, with their breakfast?
Oh, breakfast.
Breakfast.
Yeah. So, number one, eat your breakfast. Right? I think that most of my career with women, the first thing is just trying to get them to eat enough. So, starting your day with something high protein, good healthy fat, and fiber is going to set you up really well. And then making sure that you are getting repetition of those foods and variety, or even seasonal produce if you can, is so important. So with any person trying to have a baby or regulate their hormones, making sure that you have consistent, nourishing, balanced meals with hopefully good quality ingredients, if they're accessible, is always the first step. And unfortunately, protein and fiber is the hardest thing. Just trying to get people to have enough. Most important meal of the day should be your biggest meal of the day in Chinese medicine, and always have your coffee afterwards, please.
For people that aren't hungry in the morning, I think a lot of that comes down to they've trained them to be that way. Coffee on the run, or fasting, the biohacking world kind of took over there. So what would you say to somebody that isn't hungry in the morning, or how to retrain that? Because also that's a sign too of imbalance.
So I say to my patients who I try to get them to eat breakfast, and they come back to me and say, oh, I'm not hungry, I'll vomit if I eat in the morning. I'm like, it's actually a sign that your body needs this more, because it doesn't feel safe enough in the morning to have some food. It's like you're in so much fight or flight that your appetite is pushed to the back. But then in Chinese medicine, you should be wanting to eat. Your spleen and stomach should have enough energy, especially if we think about their dominant time at 7 to 9 a.m. If you're not hungry during that time and not craving food, then that tells us that they are so weak that they couldn't even process it at that time. So pushing through, gently introducing food over time, and maybe cutting out your coffee in the morning is going to help everything to settle.
And I really use that word safety again. I really like that, because I have not heard that reframe before. It's everything comes back to safety, and instead of nervous system fight or flight, what does your body feel safe for? And that's determining your nervous system and your daily presence. I know you utilize tongue diagnosis and pulse testing in clinic, and this is a very advanced topic for a lot of people, but I guess it's important information, and it's feedback. For someone that leans more towards conventional medicine, how would you explain the clinical relevance of your tongue is feedback, in this moment, as well as your pulse?
I always say that the tongue is something that we can view externally that is internal, and it changes so often depending on where you're at in the cycle, or depending on how much stress you have. And sometimes it just takes me looking at a person's tongue and telling them everything I can see going on in their body for them to be like, wow, there's actually something behind this, because it is just such obvious data from the body at all times, and just reflects so much of what's happening internally.
I was with an Ayurvedic doctor, and we went into organizations, and I said, don't mention any of your Ayurveda language, we're working with corporate. And the first thing she did is okay, everybody stick your tongues out. But they loved it, because it was, it was real-time data, and you could kind of piece the information together, and it made a lot of sense. And it was almost like she had a crystal ball. It's like, oh my gosh, you see me, that's true. So all of these, our body has so much wisdom if we're willing to listen and understand. I guess one last question before we wrap up. You mentioned a couple of times about constitution. It's not something that we have in our Western medical language. So do each individual have a constitution?
Each person's body functions very similarly, but also they have certain deficiencies, or congenital conditions, or even congenital imbalances that you get from your parents that are going to change what your homeostasis is. So my body will probably be weaker in some aspects to yours in other aspects. So constitution is something that you are leaning towards at all times. It doesn't dictate exactly how you're going to feel all the time, but say if you were to get a bit run down, you're going to easily split back into that constitution. So that matters a lot when I see certain people who I'll have a feel of their pulse day, and I'll be like, oh, have you had eating disorders before? In your teenage years, you feel quite run down in a certain way. That is an example, is their constitution. They've experienced something that has depleted their body to a point where it changes how they function in the future.
We have our health stories, don't we? In every lifetime.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's piecing that and remembering that, and always building vitality in the body. It's great feedback. Wow, thank you so much, Kiah. It's been so many wonderful insights. I love the work that you're doing, really, in bridging the language and the heart of traditional Chinese medicine into the modern day context. And it's such a it's a wonderful tool for us because it puts us at place and center, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Do you have any last minute messages or anything that you speak about on your soapbox that that a woman cannot miss?
Please eat.
Yeah.
Probably more than you think. Again, that idea of just listening to your body being radical in this crazy society, I think taking the time to prioritize yourself, but also prioritize your body is really, really important. And your periods aren't meant to be horrible.
I think that reframe is going to take a long time, but hopefully in time for the next generation.
Yeah. I am available in Melbourne and Northcote for in-person consultations, but then also online as well, which directs more herbal medicine at the forefront rather than acupuncture. So I see people all over Australia as well.
I actually have a lot of family in Melbourne, so that's very exciting. And yes, I'm pleased that you're available online for everybody as well. And you have an incredible social media education platform, so people can find you there as well.